4 beliefs that covert narcissistic parents cause that are almost never talked about. If your parents were covert narcissists, you probably have some of these 4 beliefs, but you might not have realized where they came from. These beliefs are a little different because narcissistic parents do not usually actively teach or model them. These beliefs come from our own conclusions based on observations and the frustration of being in a toxic family system. However, it's hard to connect the dots back to our family because of the indirect nature of covert abuse. That makes these beliefs seem absolutely true, and that makes them much harder to change. Understanding where our beliefs come from is an important step on the healing journey. The first one is, if anyone knew the real me, they wouldn't like me. Growing up with one or more toxic parents, we get picked on so much for every little thing. And then sometimes the ridicule comes when maybe you were just in the room. Ridicule for anything. The way you walk, the way you eat, even your resting facial expression. So it can create a deep feeling inside that we're very flawed and weird. Because if the people who are supposed to like you have problems with you, how could anyone else stand to be around you? It can also make us feel that you have to perform and try to have something to offer, like being very people-pleasing or funny or well-read. But when you're alone, do you feel exhausted and unsure if anything you said was acceptable? If your family members picked on things you said in public after you got home, you might have started to do the same thing to yourself. It's hard to learn to like yourself, much less feel comfortable and happy in your own skin with toxic parents. Number 2, everyone has a bad side. It will come out sooner or later. Have you ever had a new friend or coworker and you thought they were pretty great until, there's that disappointingly negative or angry or unreliable side? It's like we were hoping this person would be good, but when that hidden bad side comes out, we aren't actually surprised. This belief comes not only from having a narcissistic parent, but from having a codependent parent as well. Even though a codependent parent is not as unsafe as the narcissistic parent, they are constantly having their buttons pushed by their narcissistic spouse, and they will have a short fuse. The codependent parent will quickly lose their temper with their children because the narcissistic spouse will update them with all the tiny things their children do wrong, even when they are imagined, exaggerated, or fabricated. So the non-narcissistic parent shows signs that they can explode with rage as well. And the non-narcissistic parent usually prefers to keep the toxic spouse happy and reinforce to their children that no one can be relied on, and also that angry or unfair behavior is just something you have to put up with. When you add to that extended family members, strangers behaving badly, and siblings, teachers, or classmates that can be unfair or untrustworthy, it all combines to make us believe everyone has that other side that will come out sooner or later. That side that betrays selfishness, unfairness, and anger. The reason why this particular belief is much more common if you had a covert narcissistic parent is because it's much harder to recognize the red flags from covert narcissists. So we might think seemingly normal people all have that scary or untrustworthy side. And if you already have those hidden shame wounds caused by a narcissistic parent, we tend to attract and tolerate toxic people because that's familiar to us. Add to that the fact that being around narcissistic people makes us more sensitive. It's understandable that even small things that other people do could be viewed as hurtful. All of this can result in our feeling that when someone treats us badly, maybe it's not that bad. It's to be expected. It's the price to pay to have any relationship. Or it can result in near isolation, because if everyone has that bad side, what's the point? Number 3, bad people or people who do bad things never get found out. Especially when you were a child, did it seem like mean people got away with everything and got whatever they wanted? Maybe you still believe that deep down. After all, even on the news, it's common to hear reports about how businesses or individuals have cheated others or committed crimes and gotten away with them. It can feel like there's no use trying. It can also make you feel like you'd rather get a nice, quiet job doing paperwork alone. If you had a covert narcissistic parent, you saw firsthand that they treated you and others unfairly, but always seemed to get what they wanted or got away when caught by telling very convincing stories. Even if they were hit squarely with the consequences of their actions, they didn't seem to learn anything and sought help and comfort instead of changing their behavior. After you became an adult, you may have seen that sometimes people who do things that affect others eventually do get caught. But if you were raised by a covert narcissist, you might feel like it's always too little, too late. Number 4, I'm simultaneously better than and worse than everyone else. You might never say or express that, even to yourself, but a toxic family does engage in negative talk about everyone outside the family unit. They create the idea that they're better than everyone else, and if you've grown up in that atmosphere, it can be like second nature to look for ways that others are inferior. Part of it is what we were raised hearing, but the other part is to keep us from safely connecting with anyone outside the family unit. A toxic family doesn't want anyone to tell its members that there is anything wrong, so they actively discourage anyone from having friends that could tell us what is normal. But toxic families don't just attack those outside, they also criticize those inside the family. This creates an atmosphere that makes children in the family feel not good enough, which makes us feel like maybe everyone else has their life together and knows that secret to being happy, comfortable, and secure. So it can be a byproduct of being raised by a covert narcissist that you feel both superior and inferior to everyone else, which is confusing and isolating, to say the least. Covert narcissists can be so much more difficult to spot since they seem to be able to put on a normal persona more easily, even in family life. If your parents didn't often or ever engage in physical abuse, didn't abuse drugs or alcohol, and weren't often yelling, it could be more difficult to pinpoint that something was wrong. I recommend you check out Pete Walker's book, CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. There is a chapter called, What If I Was Never Hit? Which kind of says it all, doesn't it? However, this kind of family is still toxic, but can result in someone being stuck longer, or even an entire lifetime, simply because it's harder to identify when lines have been crossed. And covert narcissists are so good at manipulation that even when we know something wrong has happened, they can talk so convincingly that we end up believing we overreacted or imagined it. If you're struggling with whether or not the environment you were raised in was really that bad, it can be good to get some help and another perspective. That was my struggle too, and I ended up spending so many years trying to please an unpleasable person. If you're just realizing it, that's good. It's uncomfortable, but not as uncomfortable as spending 10 more years stuck trying to figure out if it's you or them. Please remember, it's not your fault that you've been stuck in a toxic environment, but that doesn't mean you can't change the course of your life, starting now. Please see my website in the video description below and feel free to contact me with any questions. I offer a range of coaching and healing modalities that worked wonders for me and my friends and family members. I'm sure we can find something that will help you too.